Yeah, I'll keep accepting the people. So you go ahead, Victor.
Very good. Good afternoon or good morning or maybe even good evening, depending on where you're located. And thank you very much for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about the way to finally retire and decommission that Domino environment of yours. And we're going to talk about various parts of that type of journey. But before we get started, I want to introduce the people that will be talking today. So I'll quickly introduce myself and I'll leave it over to Bert. So my name is Victor Jansson. I am running sales and partnerships within Adopteq. Have been working with Domino migration for the better part of the last 5 years within various organizations. And as I said, right now running sales and partnerships within Adopteq. Bert, you want to go next?
Yeah, awesome. Bert Wens, one of the co-founders of Power Accelerate. I've been in the Microsoft space for about, I think, 15 years almost. Big fan of Power Apps and Power Platform, and looking forward to tell you about our solutions today.
And last but not least, Mats.
Yeah, hi there. Mats Jansson. I'm the technical responsible at Adopteq and been around for quite a while. Worked with Notes and Domino the last 28 years. The last couple of years or 10 years helping customers to move away from Domino. The same people I brought on Domino 30 years ago. So that's me.
Perfect. Very good. So today we are going to talk about, as we said, migrations in various scenarios, but a little bit about ourselves. So Adopteq and Power Accelerate are both ISVs with Microsoft and has been in this work in this space for quite some time, helping various customers across the world on their journey from Domino to various new platforms around SharePoint, Power Apps, Azure, etc. And that's really the core of our business. And as you can tell, we've done well over 30,000 applications combined with our team. And again, the overall goal of everything that we do is to be there, provide the best solutions and the best guidance in order to help on the journey, which is a sometimes complex and long journey, but we're making sure that gets done as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So that's the core of our business. During the conversation,
sorry, are you moving forward the slides? Because I think you're talking about slide 3, but they're not moving for me at least.
Let me maybe try reshare. See if that will help. Sorry about that, everyone. I am gonna do like this. See if that helps.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Very good. So that in case people did not see the slide similar to Bert, I was just talking about who we are and what we've been doing for the last couple of years and what we're focusing on, which is primarily Domino migrations and Notes migrations, or as we sometimes say, we're working with legacy transformations to the Microsoft cloud in various different ways, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So typical Notes Domino transformation journey, and these are what you will see in live demos in just a couple of minutes. So it goes through various steps, and we're going to talk all of them through today. So it typically starts with understanding what you have. So that's where we provide solutions for assessment, and that is really to, as I said, understand what you have, but also most importantly, understand what you should be doing with the applications that you have today, and determine the scope. Where should it be moved? How should it be moved? What should we move? Etc. etc. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about those applications that many of you have in the environment, which might not be actively used, but they contain a lot of important data that need to be retained. Could be for legal reasons, compliance reasons, or simply because it's a value for the business in the future. So we're going to talk about what do we do with those applications and how do we keep that data over time without being dependent on the Domino platform and the Domino infrastructure. We're also going to talk about what and why we move applications to SharePoint. And a typical application that is moved to SharePoint or used in Teams is something that is very collaboration centric. So we're going to talk about that and also share some of the pitfalls that we typically help our customers to avoid and make that journey as seamless as possible. And then, of course, the big topic, which is going to be around how do we replace some of those custom applications that have been built over years in Notes with modern Power Apps, and how do we leverage the Power Platform in the best possible way, and also how do we accelerate that entire journey to make that transformation as seamless as possible. So those are the topics that we're going to walk through today, and that we're going to look at, and the Mats and Bert is going to help us understand what do we do and how can we make sure we leverage the modern platforms that we've all or either have invested in or are looking to invest in. And it ultimately comes down to the products. So the products that will deliver what I just talked to you about is going to be Migrator Plus, which is our solution for assessment and investigation. We're going to talk about Migrator and Archiver Plus to enable migrations to SharePoint, as well as enable archiving in the best possible and most secure way to ensure you have access to the data over time. And then Bert is going to introduce the Power Accelerate solution to enable migration and transformation into Power Apps and leveraging Dataverse and all that cool stuff. So it's going to be quite exciting. So that's really the topic of the conversations today. So with that said, I am going to start off by handing over to Mats, and we're going to start looking into assessments and archives. I also just want to, before I do that, actually encourage everyone to ask questions. We'll keep an eye on the chat box at all times, so feel free to post questions, and we'll wrap up the entire session with a Q&A at the end. So please post the questions you got.
We're seeing your screen, Mats.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Perfect, perfect. So every successful migration, as Victor said, starts with you getting in the know of what you have and where to put it and how. So for that, we have created a simple application. We call it Investigator. So this scans your Domino server one by one. So you select a server, you scan them, you select next server, scan them, and you create in the first level of scan, there are three scans, three level of scans, but in the first scan, you build the state, the list of all applications with some essential data. This data, what is most important and most significant in the first scan is size and number of documents. You shouldn't spend any time investigating further applications with very small size or very few documents, because you're not going to migrate them anyway. Then you get into the second scan and finding out how many forms have been used, how many attachment documents do you have, and so on. And then in the third scan, you will prepare your migration to what kind of list are you going to migrate to, and so on. For this, you will have some suggested difficulty levels for migrating to SharePoint, but also some useful information like last used. We have a lot of documents, but the date when a database was used was kind of a while ago. So maybe it's a candidate for archiving. So when you're doing this, you will not only have this list, you will of course also have, let's see now, I have some good example here, have a detailed view, like, let's see now, I can open up one. Sometimes you lose your kind of mindset. Let's open up this one. You can open up details and collect all the details. You will see when the database was last used, when and what kind of document you have on that particular document. What kind of fields do you have to prepare? Okay, we do have some attachments. Okay, maybe there is some name fields. Maybe there is some difficulties you have to be aware of, and so on. So very useful information to prepare your migration or prepare your archiving. Not only you do have this information, it's also building on a standard SQL database. So when you have made this investigation and you want to present the result to your executives, the executives almost always like to have good graphs. So it's very easy, because we do use Microsoft SQL Server in the background. It's very easy to connect Power BI to the result set, right? And from there create impressive presentations and so on. So and this tool is something you will get when you engage with us for free. So that's pretty impressive in my opinion. So when you have decided what to migrate and what to archive, okay. So what do we do from there? So let's move over to our excellent product, Migrator Plus. So Migrator Plus is our product to migrate to SharePoint, to archive applications, and to do file migrations. And file migrations is something, it's kind of the rest. It's when you move not to SharePoint, because when you move to SharePoint, we are going to convert everything so it fits well into SharePoint. When you archive, you freeze down the data. But when you move to kind of other off-the-shelf systems, like Workdays, like ServiceNow, or other database-based systems, you will probably have some interesting information in your databases that you can consume in those other systems. So, for example, in this case, I do have a kind of customer list, and that customer list can be well suited into a sales system or something. You easily map your fields like this, and let's map it like that. Drag and drop everything, drag and drop 243 documents, and then you collect the documents. So every time when you use our products, it's very controlled. So you collect the documents and export or archive. Same with archive. You point out a database, you configure which form, which fields you want to have with you, and you collect all the documents. In this case, 40,000 documents. We have we do support no limit here, so hundreds of thousands of documents, no problem. And when you then have converted, so let me show a little bit here. This kind of a system, old team room database like this. When you have that converted, it lands either in your file system or in Azure storage account. Doesn't really matter what. It's your need that is defining that. So as you see, we do export it as EML files. Sounds a little bit kind of blurry. EML files, that's email, okay? Yes, but we do also have our own viewer. So let's look at the Star Trek pizza cutter. Here's the viewer presenting the exact representation of that document. Freeze down into an EML file. The EML file is normally used for emails, but I can assure you it doesn't need to be emails. In this case, it's a standard notes database that have been archived, and you have the pictures, you have everything, you have all the fields, and you not only have all the fields, you have also hidden fields, and you also have other headers that is in the document. So what about the viewer? Do you need to have the viewer? No, you don't. If you don't want to have the search capabilities and the browsing kind of bookmark capabilities, you can be well suited just to double click and open it in Outlook. And here you have attachments like this. I don't have a viewer for PDF in my demo environment, but you see I have all the document here. Do I need to have Outlook? No, you don't need to have Outlook. You can have any email client, or of course, you don't need an email client because it's open. I can open it with Notepad. I have all the fields. It's an XML file that is represented as EML file, and I have all the fields from the original document here with the values and even the body field as HTML, but it's possible to read. What about the attachments? Of course, I have the attachments inside each document. Definitely, it's here as base64, and base64 is a very well proven standard since many years ago. So anyone can decode this encoded content to the attachment. So the most important thing when you're archiving documents, don't get into a need for a certain program. You should be able to open it with pretty much anything. I can, for God's sake, I can do a print in Linux and see this. Or I can be convenient with my end users and leave them with our archive viewer. That's very short about my presentation for now for Migrator Plus and our capabilities. I will come back a little bit later and talk a little bit about how to move to SharePoint. Okay, so back to you, Victor.
Thank you. So as Matt's just shown, the first step is actually to do an assessment, an assessment of your current landscape. See, what you have. We can support scanning one server, multiple servers. Victor, you had some examples of scanning a lot of servers at one of the customers we're working with. The next step is almost like, let's see which apps are actually still in use and which you would have value of moving towards the Microsoft Cloud. And one of the demos I'll be giving now is, let's say we identify an app which has some valuable business data with relationships, which we want to move to Dataverse and Power Apps. And that's a demo I'll do in the next 10 minutes. So I'm sharing my screen. Victor, can you just give me a nod so you can see it? Cool. So most of you have probably seen this. This is quite a simple Lotus Notes database. And so what we have is a bit of company data, contact data, and you can create inspections and products behind companies. I'll open up Microsoft here. In here, we have a bunch of fields, some data, some option sets or choice fields, they're called in Power Apps, some multi-choice fields. There's some relational data where a company has a couple of contact records, but you can also create an inspection or a product behind a company if you like. And that's all set up with a set of views and forms inside one app. Let's say we now want to export this app and look at moving it to Dataverse and the Power Platform. What would we do? So the first step is I have an extraction here. So the first step, actually, as I said, is to run an assessment. But from that assessment, we can see this application is still in use, and it would be valuable for us to move it towards the Power Platform. So then we have this extraction tool. This extraction tool, what it can do is you can point it to a specific database, so an NSF file in this case on a certain server, or if it's a local file on the local server. You enter a password to get access to the database, and then let's see if we have actually action. Ooh, we do. And then you extract. What happens with the extraction is we will read the Lotus Notes application, extract all of the metadata and data, and we will do a mapping of the relationships between the data. So here we will use the views and the form data to actually detect relationships between the records in there. And that translation is quite, it's almost a difficult part, because Lotus Notes, as most of you probably know, is more like a flat list of data. So it's documents. And in those documents, there are certain data types, and there can be relationship between the records, but that translation into something like Dataverse and Power Platform can be quite tricky. So we take away a lot of that complexity for you. And this is now finished to be extracted, this application. What has been generated now is a JSON file, which is a JSON file with data and metadata in a relational format, as well as we extracted all of the attachments, both from the Lotus Notes database, as well as from the rich text fields. So here for each company, we have a bunch of files, but also for the products, we have some files here, and we can see them, and we extracted them to the local file system. I will copy the JSON file, and that JSON file we will then feed into Power Accelerate. So I'll jump into my different demo machine, and here we have Power Accelerate. So Power Accelerate is a software as a service tool, and what we do is you can create projects here and then upload applications which you want to move to Dataverse and the Power Platform. What we'll do is I will create a new project here. I'll do test Lotus Notes webinar. We are 14 December. I select the data source. So with Power Accelerate, we currently support 6 data sources: SQL, Excel, screenshots, Microsoft Access, Mendix, and Lotus Notes. In this case, I'll select Lotus Notes. And then I will select the target Power Platform instance. So this is the Dataverse and Power Apps instance, which we're going to do the generation on. Here in the next step, I can download the extraction tool. This we already done. So all I'll do now is I'll upload the JSON file. So let me go to my downloads folder. I will paste and replace the JSON file, and then upload this one. And now Power Accelerate will do a detection. That detection will see what are all of the tables, fields, the metadata, as well as the data, which we've all detected. And what kind of things are there from a complexity point of view. Let's see if this has completed. It has. And the first thing we do is we get a bit of a review step. In this review step, we can see those same tables from the Lotus Notes application: company, inspection, products, contacts, and mine convert. And the idea is here that you start reviewing what actually have we found. So you get the company table, and in the company table, you get all of the fields with their data types. You can see which fields are in use, what kind of data is there. So if we look on the name, we can see there's 3 records here with their data. Phone isn't always used. You can change data types if you would like to all of the data types we have in Dataverse. You can ignore fields if you want. And the idea is that you select a primary field, which is a Dataverse or Power Platform concept, which is almost like the visible field which is used there, which is always like a name field. I will then go to the inspection table. Same thing applies. We can see the fields which existed on inspection. Also here, you can see that the name field is present. And you can also see this is a relationship which we detected to the company table, which is here. Also here, I'll select the primary field. I'll just go for the legacy document idea. Product, same thing. We get all of the fields here. I will select the primary field. And then finally, contact. I'll go for full name. Mine convert is technical table, which we don't use, so we can ignore that table as well. So we only take across what we actually want to use. Once your validation and review is finished, the idea is that you generate. When you generate, what will happen is inside the target Power Platform instance, which we selected when we created the project, we will create all of the metadata, meaning the tables, the fields. We will create a security role inside Dataverse, which access to the minimum set of permissions to run a model-driven app, and permissions on those tables will create. We will create a model-driven app and populate the search screens, so the views and the forms, as well as we will migrate the data, including the relational data. And so as I said before, we will translation from the flat document model inside Lotus Notes into a relational database, and we move the data inside of that model. This will take around 20-30 seconds because it's only 4 tables. The more tables and fields we have, the longer, of course, it takes. So let's wait just 5 seconds for this to complete. And I'll take a sip of water. Here we go. So this is now finished. What I can do is I can click the Open Model-Driven App button, and then I can show you the result. So the model-driven app, which has been created with all of the data inside of there. And so here we now have a model-driven app inside of this, and I'll zoom in a little bit because it's quite small. We have all of the 3 companies which were there. So we have Acme Finance, for example. Inside Acme Finance, we have the form, we have the multi-select fields, we have the choice fields. We also have relational data. So if Acme Finance had a product, I think there was a test product behind it, we can see that product in here. We take across the body fields, which is all of the rich text, so in HTML format. If you change the property of that text field in the model-driven app, you will get the exact same body and HTML rich text context as you had in Lotus Notes. We also have the inspection data in here, and then also the contacts data in here. So I'll take myself as a good test, which then also is relations to the company table in our case. So this is the first step where you move across the data and the metadata to Dataverse, and we generate a model-driven app. The next step, of course, where everyone knows Power Apps from, is the Canvas apps. So the next thing you can do is you can generate a Canvas app. For this, we make use of templates. By default, we make available a phone layout template and a Canvas and a tablet layout template to everyone. But most of our customers, especially as they're looking at 10, 20, 50 or more apps, they ask us to host their own UX design template inside of their workspace. And that then uses their logo, their UX design, and it moves across all of the apps into the same look and feel. I will go for the phone layout template here, and then I will select for which tables I want to generate screens. I'll just go for all of them. And this will now generate an MS App file, which is the source file of the Canvas Studio. And in about 10 seconds, this should finish. Here we go. Let me download this Canvas app file. So it's now in my downloads, and I'll open up the studio. And let me open up the MS App file from my downloads folder. This always takes 20 seconds as well to load, as I think it's refreshing the data sources. So we're just opening up the app in the studio now. Here we go. So what we're seeing here now is we have the studio, and inside the studio, we have screens generated for each one of the tables which we selected. So by default, what we generate is create, read, update, delete behavior for each one of the screens. It's a working app by default. So what you can do now is you can run this app, go to the companies. We can see Microsoft, for example, and we can make changes to the Microsoft record and update that. Now, if you want to make an inspection, let's say behind the Microsoft record, we can do that for a certain date and so on. Of course, this isn't a full-blown one-on-one migration of the form, how it used to be in Lotus Notes and what it needs to be right now. But we do take across a lot of the functionality already and give you a great starting point from a template, both at the Canvas side and the model-driven app side. The idea here is that now in the studio, you can go in there and add formulas and extra functionality which you want to add across all of these screens as part of this Canvas app template, and complete some of the manual configuration, and then create the modern app as you want it from your existing Lotus Notes application. At a very high level, that is a migration of a Lotus Notes app and database towards a Power Platform Dataverse, a Canvas app, and a model-driven app. I'll now hand it back over to...
Awesome. I thought, Bert, actually, let's, because we received quite a lot of questions specifically on the Power Apps topic, so I thought I would take you a bit off guard and ask you some of those questions right up front. So one of the questions that we have received, Bert, is whether this will support security from Lotus Notes to Dataverse, i.e. item level security and ACL of Lotus Notes.
At the moment, what we do is we create a security role on top of Dataverse, which has a minimum set of permissions for a model-driven app, and then permissions on those tables, which we generated, in this case, 4 tables. We do not do a one-on-one copy of Lotus Notes because it kind of works a little bit different inside Dataverse and Lotus Notes is our experience. So I think, to answer the question, there is still some manual configuration work to be done to get across the exact same permissions.
Yeah, very good. Another question, how do you migrate documents which do have readers, fields, or write limitations, so-called editors? How will this be represented and implemented in Power Platform?
So those readers, so if they are fields in the Lotus Notes system, we will extract them using the extraction tool. We will get the data which is in there, and then we will put them forward for you in the review step. By default, depending on the size of these, this will be either text fields or text area fields. And we will copy them across to Dataverse like that. If there is specific functionality, let's say you want an HTML editor or a rich text editor in one of these, you could actually change the form properties in the model-driven app to show that specific field as a rich text field, and then you almost have the exact same functionality as you used to have in Lotus Notes.
And if there is field level security, I think that's also part of the question.
Field level security, good question.
It's a challenging one.
It's good to get challenging questions. At the moment, we do not take that across. It's something you would have to manually set up as soon as we migrate to Dataverse. If it exists in one way or another in Lotus Notes, and you want it also in Dataverse, you would have to manually set that up.
Very good. And the final question before we go into the next topic, why do we need both model-driven and Canvas apps?
Okay, so what we do before creating the Canvas app is we actually generate a data model. That data model we need to put somewhere. As a company, we made a really big bet on Dataverse. So our target for moving from Lotus Notes, but also our other channels, Excel, Access, SQL, and screenshots, we move across the data model, so the metadata, to a central database, in our case, Dataverse. And then on top of that, we generate a Canvas app based on that data model. So that's why we have a requirement to have both. A lot of our customers, in all honesty, do not use the model-driven apps, but they just use the Canvas apps on top of Dataverse, and they use it as a database. So you don't absolutely have to use them both, but there is a prerequisite on Dataverse.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you, Bert. And if there are any further questions on this specific topic, feel free to continue post them in the chat window, and we'll take them at the end as well. Well, thanks, Bert. Very good.
I'll stop sharing and I'll give the screen back to Mats, I guess.
Sounds very good. Mats, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Victor. So let's see, now I should share my screen again. Good. Hope everyone can see it. Back to Migrator Plus. So we have seen how you can find what you have, and what to do with it. We have seen a little bit of our capabilities to export the content from notes databases to CSV files. I didn't show the CSV file. It's not so sexy to look at the CSV file. But the good thing, this is kind of a replacement to get the data out instead of writing export agents. Pretty much every notes developer have sometime wrote one or multiple export agents. Instead of doing that, you configure. You don't have to alter the database, you configure. Same when you do archive migration. Pretty much everyone can export data in whatever format you have, but you shouldn't do that. You should configure. Going over to SharePoint it's kind of more full-blown because here, as well as when you migrate to Power Apps, you not only export, you convert and you upload. So therefore, takes a little bit more effort, and you will have significant time savings of using a good tool like Migrator Plus or Power Accelerate. And moving to SharePoint, same methodology. Create the configuration, and here we have a configuration name. We have the database, we have the URL, blah, blah, blah. But we also have, where should we put this? I will put it in a SharePoint list, a generic list with a certain name. You can create the list, or you should. It's not necessary, but it's very convenient to create the list from here. Then you will not only have the list, you will have all other things prepared in your SharePoint environment. And your SharePoint environment can be SharePoint Online, and it can be SharePoint on premises. We do support multi-factor authentication. We do support app logins. And we do support a lot of things. And you set it up in the setup screen of Migrator Plus. We save the notes password. You don't have to save the notes password. You can use notes shared login if you want, and so on and so on. Very, very full blown. Okay. After you have this defined what to move, where to move it, you need to define more details about what you should move. So drag and drop the fields over to columns in SharePoint. So a field in a notes database is a column in a SharePoint list. Of course, we do support several types of lists. We do support discussion boards, and we do support also document libraries and many others. There is some experience I can share with you. So first of all, discussion boards. Good to use when you have plain discussions or team room discussions that you want to move to this discussion board. Then response documents will be supported to some extent. But there is some difficulties changing or making changes to the design in the discussion board in SharePoint. Another way is to use generic list and work a little bit more on the response documents. That's said about discussion boards, discussions, and response documents. When it comes to document libraries, so be aware that the document library in SharePoint do support attachment, one per item. So the item is actually the attachment, and you will have less capabilities of having formatted rich text around the attachment. I will show a little bit to you guys what I mean. So this is a rich text, and inside this rich text, we actually have an attachment. In this case, it's represented by an inline picture. It's actually an attachment. It can look like this. It can look like this. but you do have some extensive use in notes of rich text, okay? Moving that to SharePoint, you will have less capabilities in some cases, okay? So then after you have defined this, you need to tell which user to use for as the default user for the migration. Then you collect the documents and you start migrating, right? And when you start migrating, you can select all select some of the documents. It can be thousands of documents. The good thing with our tool is you have a complete way of tracing what have been migrated, the document ID, when was it migrated, to which ID in SharePoint is it migrated, and when was it last used. So we are talking about live data. So live data is, there is a risk or a possibility that people are working in the database you are migrating. Therefore, we do support Delta migrations. So after you have migrated the contents, you have designed, you have worked a little bit with the workflow, blah, blah, blah. Then you go back and say, okay, we have a cutover this weekend. Then you can do a catch-up migration, migrate the Delta over the weekend, and off you go. And it will only update what have been changed and add what have been added, nothing else. That's very, very good to know. When it's over, it can look like this. So here's the aquarium bed. And the rich text, and we have the status field, and we have the type field, and we have the title field. Everything is brought over. Everything is brought over. So what about attachments? So let's look at the unicorns, okay? So here's some information. There was no attachment there. Here we go. Here I have an attachment, a PDF file. So here's the PDF file. Everything is brought over. And some of you may say that the view in this case doesn't look so good. Oh, this is a SharePoint standard view. You can always put some effort in designing, in making it more neat to look at and so on. Also the documents. Why not using it in Teams? Okay, so I can go over to Microsoft Teams here, and here's the migrated. Actually, that's the exact database we were actually looking at, and let's look at the amazing ideas. So here's in Teams, okay, and here's the aquarium bed right there in Teams. Wow. So what about we do have some categorization in the views. So the categorization in the views, yes, it's supported. It's not by our tool. It's Microsoft. It's SharePoint. It looks like this, right? And here's the attachment. So a little bit of tweaking, then you're off to go with the interface as well. I will also show you a couple of other things here. Very easily, you can also make use of different forms in the same list, and a little bit tweaking. And here you go with your customer list, and you have some decent title formatting, address and details, and so on, kind of sections. So it's but in the end, it's up to your tool that moves the data, the important content over in the best possible way, so it's possible to continue working on it. We don't freeze the data when you migrate to SharePoint. We make it possible to direct after the migration, start working on it, start designing, start make use of it, and let's put a region on this one. Yes, central region, and flooding. Okay, so this is migrated just some while ago, and it's possible to continue working on it directly. So have I forgot anything? So also, when you have migrated with our experience, you may think that, okay, these fields was enough, and your user comes to you and say, no, hi Mats, we are missing the city field. Okay, so we are missing the city field. Okay, I have to migrate the city field as well. So when I do that, it's possible to do an addition of this field to all migrated content in this database, just by adding it like that, just by doing update selected documents with content of new fields, and off you go, and we will push this field right into the same IDs that we already have migrated. So we have worked with our experience, tried to put this into a tool best in the market to migrate Notes content to SharePoint, to archive the content, as you saw before, freeze it down, make it possible to open not next year, not in 2 years, but in 50 years, because it's text-based. So you will always have a possibility to open a text-based file, but also moving to other off-the-shelf products. So I tried to answer some questions before. I will hand the mic back to Victor, who will now start, I think, to wrap up on the Q&A. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Mats. And I did see that we got quite a few questions. We've tried to answer them all. If there are any other questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to continue post them. But overall, as you probably have seen, or hopefully have seen by now, the goal really of this webinar was to show you all the various alternatives and options when looking to transform and decommission Domino. So we appreciate that Domino has been used very differently within different organizations. Some want to go to Power Apps, and we got the capabilities to accelerate that. Others are looking to archive what is still left in Domino. And maybe a third one is looking to standardize in SharePoint. The key thing is that regardless of what you're looking to do, we got the capabilities around migration to Power Apps or acceleration of Power Apps, as you could see. We got the capabilities to help you go to SharePoint in the best possible way. It was archive, but also, I mean, what we typically see is that you also have other platforms that are suitable candidates for what you've had in Notes. So we got the capability to also export to CSV. So Bert, is there anything that you would like to add?
And I think I want to, first of all, I'll give people an opportunity to ask some more questions if there are any. I guess the one thing we want to offer the audience for attending as well is a discovery workshop. So if anyone wants us to come and have a look at their Lotus Notes landscape, we are offering a discovery workshop, and I'll put the link in the chat. Or here you go, Victor's already sharing his screen. So basically, it's a quick form which you can fill in, and we will contact you and have a workshop with you to try to understand your landscape and to see if there's any collaboration opportunities, how we could help you as a company.
Yep. So we really encourage you all to, if you are facing a journey from Notes Domino to Power Apps or to SharePoint, or overall in the very early stages of want to do something, take the opportunity and schedule this free workshop, and we'll sit down with you and we will try to understand your specific needs and share our experience and expertise within this area. So again, really encourage you all to take that opportunity, and we'll get something scheduled between us and you.
Exactly.
So have we received any other questions in the chat, Bert?
Not that I can see. If not, I'll use the time to also say that we also support other channels. So we talked about Lotus Notes, of course, today a lot. But if you have any legacy apps on Access, Excel, SQL, Mendix or others, we can also help you to migrate those to Power Platform if you want. And you can feel free to reach out to any of us.
Sounds good. And again, if there are other questions or things you want to discuss or try any of the solutions out, feel free to reach out or fill out the form, and we'll really do our best to come back to you as soon as we can. So unless Mats, anything you want to add?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you for all the good questions and feedback. Love to stay in touch with all of you in the future. And please reach out to any of us if you have any questions you may have when you talk to your colleagues afterwards. Just send an email, nudge us anywhere in any channel, LinkedIn or by email or anything. Thank you, all of you.
Awesome. I'll echo that. Thanks everyone for attending. We'll share out the recording and the slides which we shared. If you want the free discovery workshop, fill in the form, and hopefully we'll be in touch.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon or rest of your day, depending on where you're located. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.